Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here today with something a little bit different for you. This is what I like to call Sunday school session, okay? As you probably have recognized, I don't usually come on Sundays. I do take the Sabbath quite seriously, that being by way of rest and rejuvenation for regeneration, as it was intended for it to be so. So I usually don't do much on Sunday, but I've been, as I said in my last video, my last message, I said that there have been some information that's being impressed upon me by way of the Spirit that I feel excited to share. And I just needed some time to kind of organize my thoughts, organize the downloads as they're pouring in, quite honestly, so that I could ultimately communicate it as concise as possible. Whereas with the cards, sometimes I feel a little bit rushed and sometimes even overwhelmed, keeping up with what I'm channeling in connection with the cards and the pictures, and trying to keep the message going along. It's a different vibration of vitality with the cards than when I can organize my thoughts and share what's been impressed. So that's what I'm going to do today. Sunday school lesson is probably going to be a series that I'll continue, because I can tell you, spoiler alert right now, that this is just a part one. There's definitely going to be a to be continued, maybe a 2 or 3 or 4. I don't know. On this particular series alone, that I'm going to have to extend, because I just didn't want to overwhelm and overload the first message, given I know it's already a challenge for people to watch things that don't entail the cards anyway. I didn't want to go too long and too hard before I lose the engagement, which is why I'm going to actually stop talking right now. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to just pretty much read my notes as they are. I pray that you just open your mind, your heart, your spirit to just hear me out ultimately. Now, the title of this that came to me is such: For the Love of Lilith. Okay? So that's where I'm speaking from. All right. The light and dark of the divine feminine is expressed through Mary Magdalene. The Chosen TV series depicts the dark side of Mary Magdalene before her encounter with Jesus as a rageful woman that is emotionally disturbed. She would have psychotic episodes where she would lash out on anyone and everyone in her path post-triggering. Later, you learn that the source of her imbalance is due to traumatic abuse as a child, where her father was killed and the culprits desecrated her innocence. She was left emotionally barren with no protection or security. She resorted to risky means of making a living for the sake of survival. This is all allegedly, of course. The Chosen series disclaims that some of the Bible stories depicted have been enhanced for entertainment purposes. To that I say, what else is new? I'm referring to this show to support the spiritual downloads that I've been receiving regarding the divine feminine, adjacent to the very way that a false narrative has been perpetuated for the very purpose of sullying the spiritual signature of the woman or womb, while at the same time literally reaping the benefits of her virtuous vitality. I call this manifesting madness. Manifesting madness. Emphasis on man, who physically, spiritually, and figuratively has played a leading role in the oppression and suppression of what should be his co-star. Instead, woman has been regulated to a supporting role at best, due to the unrighteous rhetoric spoken through her, to her, and about her. This has ultimately contributed to a character arc that depicts pure feminine energy as chaotic and emotionally erratic, demonizing its desire to be both sacred and secure as codependent, unstable, and untrustworthy unto its own divine devices. In fact, feminines have been stripped of any sanctity at all except by the stringent constraints characterized by the patriarchal powers that be and have been for centuries. In essence, divine feminine has been typecast and limited to two character types, holy or hoe. Consider the stark difference between Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene, the lover of Jesus. However cringy the latter is to you is exactly the point. It's somehow palatable to perceive woman as a pure vessel of light, but questionable as a vital force and source of love. The downloads that I've been receiving have been revealing how she or we may be all of that and so much more. Now, where to begin is the challenge. Yes, begin, because that was just the intro. Now, I want to pause here for a second to just insert that I have respect for ancient divine feminine archetypes. I'm using Mary, mother of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene specifically right here, right now. First of all, because it's most conventional to relate to, more or less, even if you don't relate religiously. But it's no disrespect to the archetypes, the expressions of divine feminine that were beyond Mary, of course, and of course beyond Mary Magdalene, i.e. Isis. So I recognize and realize the correlation between those images in those depictions, certainly. So don't think it's lost on me. But for the purposes of what I'm sharing today, this is just where I choose to express what's been imparted. But more or less, if you have a connection to those expressions and you see the correlation, then you can just transmit the information into that storyline that you most connect with. All right? Cool. Again, I'm using Mary and Mary as a point of reference, not as a tool for reformation, to reform anyone here. You do not have to be a believer in Jesus, Christianity, or God to feel what I'm saying. My own understanding has shifted drastically over the years and is ever evolving to this very day. Hell, these downloads are even reshaping my spiritual understanding of the divine and my relationship with it in real time. I encourage that you consider what I have to share as merely a proposition of perspective, not as any imposition in any way to what holds true to you. Now, with all the previews aside, here are the raw downloads, some of which we know, some of which you may have heard, and some that you may have not. All right. So the way to manifest spirit into matter is through the womb man. The spirit seeks to procreate and co-create with beings that have the proven capacity to perceive and receive supernatural force by way of the supreme source of all. Mary, the Divine Mother, was chosen for her charity, not her chastity. There was something shown and proven regarding her expression of love in what was a dark society that set her apart. It's possible that she wasn't a virgin at all, but the seed inseminated was sanctified by her submission to Source to accept the challenge. Consider that she must have faced public scrutiny for becoming pregnant before marriage. We don't read about that, but you know it must have been likely, given she and Joseph were the only ones privy to the promise they were carrying in their midst. Even though she was chosen, she had to be a yes to the calling and devoted to the charge. Spoiler alert, she lived up to the challenge, bringing Jesus to life and nurturing him to maturity to the point where he was willing and able to answer his own divine call, to follow his North Node. But that's not the focus of this message. This one's for the ladies. The biggest point of starting with Mother Mary is to express how her natural essence may have been distorted and even inflated in a way to promote a more oppressive agenda. As a virgin, supernaturally inseminated, she becomes propped up as more of an impossible aspiration of divine exaltation. That's a great disparity between Mary. Oh, hold on. Let me turn up a little bit. There you go. That's a great where was I at? That's a great, I guess that was a point there. Hold on. Where was I at? Okay. There's a great disparity between Mary and the everyday mother by seismic supernatural standards. However, there's relatability there with a woman as human as I am, who may have stepped outside of the conventions of society, yet and still has found favor and fortune with the divine. That's an image that one can not only be inspired by, but can aspire to be. And there lies the patriarchal conflict. A woman assured of her value and worthiness beyond what has been deemed societally acceptable, let alone sanctified, is a great threat to those with a vested obsession with the possession of total power. So if Mary is the supreme mother of supernatural succession, she can be used as the poster child for all that you should be, but in actuality never will be. The patriarchy dominates the energy force, siphoning from the source of those whom will try to measure up relentlessly and undoubtedly will fail, and it takes a double portion from the subsequent excretion of guilt and shame on account of falling short in the first place. And there's yet another portion to extract from those that are condemned into damnation for their resistance to submit to any standard at all. It's a mind fuck, emotionally and psychologically, manipulation, spiritual narcissism in the most covert and conventional way. Now, fast forward a few scenes, enter Mary Magdalene, the most famous hoe of all times, allegedly. I have it on great spiritual authority that she wasn't a prostitute at all. At best or worst, she may have been a revolutionary. Okay, at best or at worst, she may have been a revolutionarily independent woman who may have had a sordid past or lineage, but that's what contributed to her resistance to societal statutes of limitations on what a woman should be, do, and have. What better way to discredit a feminine force with such influential potential than to demonize and desecrate her character? For as faithful as she was to the ministry of Jesus, it somehow always goes without saying that she has a dark side, allegedly. Truth is, we all have a shadow self. The imbalance throughout time has been the double standard that permits masculines to embrace theirs while pressuring feminines to reject theirs. At Mary's best and worst, whatever that truly may have been, she is a pure depiction of sovereignty, self-love, and unconditional love and submission to man and the spirit of Jesus. It gets deeper than conventional love from what the downloads revealed to me. Hence why it's been critical for the patriarch to project the stark contrast of her character before and after her encounter with Jesus. Before, she was a wretch by way of her rebellion. After, she was redeemed on account of her submission and devotion. This makes Jesus, then the man, the common denominator in her saving grace. The most interesting download I received was that she saved him. Moreover, they saved each other. Could it be, as it was revealed to me, that Jesus was able to resurrect and ascend on account of Mary's presence and power in the earth realm? Her being someone that could believe and conceive beyond the conventional 3D perspective. It makes so much sense to me, supernaturally speaking, but I know it may be a bit fantastical to accept, so hear me out. I stated that spirit becomes matter by way of the womb through the womb man. That conception is not limited by 3D constraints. Before Mother Mary could physically conceive Jesus, the seed was planted in her mind. Perception was the initial point of procreation. She was chosen for her fertile mind, a breeding ground for new possibilities. Such is true for Mary Magdalene. She was one already functioning outside of conventional confinement, and there must have been something special about her expression of charity, i.e. love, unto herself and to others, that despite being marginalized by society, she was willing to receive and return divine love unto Jesus himself. It was a righteous reciprocation. There was an ethereal exchange of love between the two that, with obvious reason, has been rewritten or deleted scenes in the holy story altogether. Not only is it likely that they had an intimate connection in the flesh, which is not altogether new information, what I perceive is that they had a secret and sacred connection post-resurrection, either of which there were physical children birthed or spiritual offspring, which are the beloved chosen starseed present in the earth realm today. To take a step back, Mary was the first one present at the tomb of Jesus. She was the first to behold his resurrected being. Now it's written that she was carrying spices and whatnot to dress the body, right? However, it was not customary to be in contact with the dead at that time without being deemed unholy or unclean. Yet she went anyway. Not untypical or surprising for an already unconventional woman, right? Right. But it makes one think why she really showed up to the tomb in spirit and in truth if there was true acceptance of Jesus' demise. She either had that good old woman's intuition, as mystical as it may be, that there was more to the story and to life than what meets the eye, or there was some other supernatural inkling in her being that somehow her presence could make a difference in his perceived demise. In either regard, there's a ring of truth to the ideal that Jesus resurrected on account of her presence. Her presence activated his ultimate ascension. Not only was she the first to bear witness to his post-mortem being, she was the one that carried the good news to the other disciples, making her, as I've heard one pastor say, the first evangelist ever. Side note, shout out to Reverend Lakeisha Walrun at First Corinthian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York, of whom I heard say that. The spirit of the matter of Jesus post-crucifixion was manifested through Mary Magdalene's womb, first through the seed of her own perception, then by way of her perspective, an encounter of which she shared with the disciples, who then subsequently bore witness. But perhaps most astounding is the ideal that Mary physically conceived the seeds of Jesus and actualized the continuance of a divine dynasty alive and well today. Could this have occurred before or after the crucifixion or resurrection? That's the question, right? It has been said that Mary disappeared into obscurity. Wonder where she went and why. Now, again, this is a fantastical concept, so to practicalize it a bit, it could very well be that Mary was the mother of the continuance of Jesus's legacy by way of the Spirit as she began to live and create life in the essence of the ethereal force she had become so influenced by, simply meaning she expanded the ministry through her own life expression. That's one for the supernatural skeptics. I see you, I hear you, I understand. But for those that fancy a little fantasy, it's something deeper than that, and perhaps even deeper than what I've shared so far. There's more. As it was downloaded to me, the reason for Mary Magdalene's propensity to embody such a supernatural potential is because of her own ethereal essence in spirit and in truth, meaning her God essence. As I stated from the very beginning, Mary Magdalene may have been a divine descendant, or maybe ascendant, maybe I meant to say that, descendant of goddess life force, specifically the embodiment of Lilith and Eve, dark and light. Both were essential to the deliverance of divine presence in the earth, i.e. Jesus. She would need to be light enough to receive love and exchange it, and dark enough to conceive light and emit it. Chosen indeed to deliver a divine seed straight from Supreme Source. However dangerous is such, how dangerous, oh, I'm sorry, however, how dangerous is such an empowering truth that a woman condemned could be deemed worthy of unconditional love and also so precious to conceive it in the highest frequency imaginable. That's a lethal weapon in the hands of a woman to a male-dominated society threatened by the mere possibility of losing its grip on power. Could Jesus and Mary Magdalene have been the original, or at least ancient, twin flames in essence? Of course, giving light to all the ones that have come before them. Side note. To pronounce such a possibility undoubtedly levels the playing field between the powers of men and women because it suggests that she needs him just as much as he needs her. They are a sacred union indeed, divine to an eternal destiny in spirit and in truth. Not to mention that calls into light the existence of their offspring, a dynasty of which has been scattered to and fro, perhaps gravely unaware of their true identity or inheritance in this lifetime, on this timeline, and in this realm of reality. Consider the dynamic dimensions of the possibilities of so-called impossibilities. Then consider that we are entering the age of Aquarius, where all shall be known. These ideals, even just as symbolic concepts and figurative facts, are potent enough to at least compel a fresh consideration of what is considered to be reality as we know it. And now is the revelation of the protagonist of the story, the demonic spirit force that has been active since the so-called fall and is currently fighting for its continued existence in the chaos, confusion, and conflict that persists today. And it exists by way of some of the covens and secret societies, known and unknown, secretively and covert and overt, and other conduits of crazy in society today. It's the shape-shifting force of fear that loves to hate. It's what's been streaming through the male seed through weak wands and has been desecrating the womb, tainting what would be the Holy Grail with disgrace. All this to be continued on the next Sunday school session. So that's it for now. What I do look forward to getting into isn't, even as I was reading, I feel like there's even more invitation to go deeper into the expression of Mary Magdalene as dark and light, like how it's been impressed upon me as to how it could be that she's the embodiment of this goddess lineage that keeps reoccurring, lifetime after lifetime. And each lifetime, as I said, maybe I meant to say ascended for a reason, because it's not so much a descension as it is an ascension, that each lifetime we're supposed to get better and better, as if we reemerge. If you believe in that, you don't have to, but definitely even through your maturation cycles, there's an evolution of existence, right? You are to be evolving in an elevated way. But in this most spiritually supernatural way, the expression of Mary, as I'm sharing it, is just, as I said, an ancient expression that was just inflated more conventionally so, but then distorted as well in a conventional way, because the story in its pure essence is a message to us all of the power that we're divinely ordained to possess and express. But as it's conventionalized through the story of Mary, it almost depletes her divinity so that you can't even see past her faults or the disparity of her character as it was, to see that she's just as much of a dynamic being, perhaps even, as I said, in the ascension process of Jesus himself, as Jesus himself, if you get what I'm saying. Like, consider the ideal of, it's a as above, so below type of situation. Consider the ideal when we think about twin flame dynamics here in the earth, us as human beings. The reason why we can't it's harder to really digest the concept of it being so on a supernatural level is exactly for why I'm saying what I'm saying. That we have been we have the ideal of feminine divinity has been desecrated and diminished for a reason, for a purpose, to create this imbalance in power. But like I said, what if she was just as important to the story as he was, but she's been more or less sidelined as some supporting character? So like I said, consider twin flame energy here, where it's almost like your other half, you know, that energy, you know, where Jesus came in to kind of disrupt the conventions of society. Maybe it wasn't just by way of his presence, but in the unification of the divine feminine and masculine collectively, sacredly so. And that didn't work for the patriarchal society to elevate women on the same level. So they just lifted Jesus as the sacrifice, and really ultimately subsequently sacrificing Mary as well, in essence, consider. But like I said, conventionally so, practically so now, considering those that do subscribe to the ideal of a twin flame union or a sacred union, a kingdom spouse, a heavenly, a divine partner, or whatever you call it to be, where do you think that reflection comes from? What is the mirror image? What is the ultimate depiction of that divine union? You know, it has to have a reflection as above, so below, which is why there's been such a disparity in the coming together in the earth realm as it is, because the disparity's been happening from a higher source and force that has a lot to gain from keeping us in disconnection from our true selves and our true divine natures, and then of course one to another. Consider the Lovers card. They're on the same playing field, but you do have the divine feminine who is looking upward into the heavens beyond herself, as the masculine is looking into her. That's the connection there. As we feminines have been kind of leading the charge to bringing ourselves to a place of wholeness and healing, energetically and spiritually, mentally, psychologically, every which way, with really not much help from the masculine vibration, conventionally so. You know, even if you find a good man out there, as I like to say, there's still this stream of consciousness that is alive under the surface. Even with the best intentions, it's almost become a way of life and a way of our society. So who gets to break that chain? Who gets to take that charge of divine equality one to another? Who gets to be that living example of we are God, one to another, me and you, not just him, not just her, but us together are the creative expression of divine force, you know, of supreme source at that. So it's just the same. If you really think about it, it's really not all that fantastical what I'm saying, but the way that it's coming to me, you know, is interesting, you know, especially by way of us of almost considering that maybe perhaps without the presence of Mary Magdalene and that unconditional love that she just harvested and harbored for Jesus and kept him alive in her spirit, that maybe perhaps he wouldn't have had a womb, a one man to resurrect and ascend for, or in by way of the force to do so. And also consider, the text even says that Christ is allegedly coming back for what? His bride. Now it's said to be the church, yeah, but also consider traditionally that the feminine energy has been one that's ultimately been most populated in the conventional church, you know, if you really consider it. So that even that there supports the impression as I'm expressing it. So it's just something to kind of open your mind. And then, as I said, there's so much more, because I want to get into Lilith, the condemnation, contempt, and redemption of that spirit, that dark nature of the divine feminine, that, as I said, has ultimately been depressed and suppressed as something evil and demonic, when in actuality, it's probably more of a smear campaign on her true nature. Even if she has begun, you know, it's like eventually if people start saying certain things about you, eventually it almost becomes true, even by way of just what people believe. You know, it kind of somehow grows some legs of truth to it, even if it's not holistically true. So there's something that's been incited in my spirit about how we've been misguided on the true essence of Lilith, it just being the dark shadow of the true nature of the divine feminine, as it's been propped up, even this more evangelical essence of Eve, the counterpart, to be the one to aspire to. This original woman who, who's faulty and has to then depend on, she's disrespectful to God and her rebellion in a sense, and she's good enough to ultimately foster the whole of creation through her womb, but still somehow diminished to the degree that she still needs Adam to ultimately qualify her existence, if that makes sense. There's not a balanced playing field there. She pretty much gets blamed for the whole fall of creation in some regard, when there's just as much responsibility and accountability and ultimately authority amongst the two of them, right? So I want to talk a little bit about Lilith, again, how she's been condemned, how she's been held in contempt, and as I kind of touched on a bit, with these darker societies and secret covens, they know the true essence of Lilith, that dark nature of which all things are manifested from. Remember, the earth was formed out of darkness. All of creation was formed out of darkness. So without that darkness, there is no light. It comes from out of the darkness. And Lilith is that essence in which some of these covens and secret societies use to manifest from, while at the same time desecrating her essence and damning it to hell by what they are manifesting for and what intentions they're creating from her womb or from her fertile essence. So there's that I want to talk about. And then, of course, I want to talk a little bit about this demonic force itself, of which I'm not sure if I'll be able to name. I've heard other people kind of spew out names here and there, and I can't say that I can subscribe to it per se, but I have much more study to do by way of continuing on this this series. I just felt, as the downloads were coming to me throughout this week, I felt like an incitement of time to just share what I have. The perfectionist in me would love to have all my ducks in a row and almost like know every aspect of what I want to talk about before I even do it. But something in my spirit said, just share. This is the time to release this information, and it'll be added on to, even unto me, from what has already been downloaded and what is to come. So I hope that you'll stay connected. So we'll talk about the demonic forces that have ultimately been coming through the possession of the masculine foremost, but also in the divine feminine, and in the feminine, not the divine feminine per se. It's been after the divine feminine, and of course after the divine masculine too. Those that are out of the sanctity, those that are in divine alignment, can have that tag of divine, more or less, or at least intentional about aspiring to that alignment. But it's been plaguing the masculine and feminine alike in different ways, i.e. consider Jezebel. I feel like Jezebel and Lilith kind of get intertwined, but something in my spirit is saying that they are not the same. They are not the same. Jezebel has a different essence and intention than Lilith, who I believe is more innately divine than demonic, as is sometimes depicted, and the opposite is true for the Jezebel spirit. How the masculine demonic spirit gets to be expressed, I'm not sure yet. So you'll have to stay tuned if you're interested at all to what more the spirit has to say in this regard. But for now, this has been the first of perhaps many, or at least a few, Sunday school lessons. I hope you are having a wonderful Sunday restfully wherever you are. It is rainy still indeed here on account of that tropical storm Ophelia passing through. So I hope you're staying safe and sound and dry and secure and snuggled up wherever you are. I'm about to go relax, as I love to do on Sunday, and just continue on in the way that I do best, in peace and in love. Okay, and so till next time, once again, thank you for listening and watching. Definitely subscribe, like, share, and comment as you feel guided. And until next time, peace.